Hello and welcome back to Bits and Bobs. Today's video is the life and legacy of King George II, the monarch of the month for April. So this is where the story begins. This is King George I, the father of King George II, or of course when he was born, Prince George. Now the wife of George I and the mother of King George II was Sophia Dorothy of Celli, as we can see here. And their child, George II, Prince George, was born on the 9th of November in 1683. That was the year he was born. He was born in northern Germany at Herrenhausen Palace, as we can see here in Hanover. And this was a palace owned by his father, King George I. He owned it in part of northern Germany. So George II was born and raised in northern Germany, making him the last British monarch to be born outside of Britain. As I can say, he was not actually born in the country. Reports say that the young prince was loved very dearly by his mother, but was a shy child, although devoted himself fully to his studies and academics at a younger age. Then, on the 11th of June in 1727, his father, King George I, died, aged 67. And so therefore on that day, Prince George, who was aged 43 by then, ascended to the throne, replacing his father as King George I. Now he was King George II, as his father had named him after himself. And later that year of 1727, the country was in celebration with the wonderful and splendid coronation of King George II, as we can see here, a magnificent event to behold. So then he was therefore crowned later that year in 1727 as King George II of Great Britain. Now it is worth mentioning, of course, that he was married before his ascension to the throne. His wife, Caroline of Ansbach, was married to King George between 1705 to her death in 1737. And while we're on the subject of family, before we return to the sort of timeline of his reign, let's have a look at George II's children. He had 10 children: Frederick, Prince of Wales, Princess Mary of Great Britain, Prince William, Duke of Cumberland, Louise of Great Britain, Princess Amelia of Great Britain, Anne, a stillborn son, Princess Catherine of Great Britain, Johann, Ludwig, and also Prince George. So he had 10 children, a lot of children, of course, but that was more common back in the time. Now then, onto a timeline. In 1732, the province of the USA, Georgia, was named after the King of England. The King of Britain was, of course, of George II, therefore Georgia. In 1737, as we mentioned, his wife died, so then after this he was a widow for the remainder of his reign. In 1739, Britain goes to war with Spain. The Battle of Jenkins Ear, as it's known. There were results of many battles, but in the end was a bit of a stalemate and never really led to anything much other than just a stalemate, and it died down after the battles. A few years later, it is the Battle of Deddington against France in 1743, and here we can see there King George II himself leading his troops to battle. In this battle, he was aged 60 at this time, and he was in fact the last ever British monarch, at age 60 as well, to join his troops in battle, actually fighting rather than just commanding, as all later monarchs have done. And of course, he was successful in beating the French. Between the years 1745 and 1746, there were many Jacobite uprisings from Scotland, and although initially successful, they were defeated. Then in 1751, heir to the throne, eldest son of George II, Frederick, Prince of Wales, dies and passes away, therefore leaving the heir to the throne as his son, Sir George II's grandson, a young Prince George, who would go on to be King George III. In 1752, Britain adopts the Georgian calendar, and we can see there on screen an early version of a calendar with the more familiar months to us now that was introduced back in 1752. And then between 1757 and 1764, the 7 Years' War began. And it would be a very long war, of course, actually lasting 9 years, although called the 7 Years' War, and it was in fact a British victory. In 1759, campaigns in Canada were going very well, and Canada was actually added to the British Empire in 1759, so George II was now king of yet another massive chunk of land in the empire, ruling the whole of Canada in this year and onwards. And also in 1759, the first flowers were planted at the Royal Botanical Gardens in Kew, and over 350 years later, these gardens are of course still there to this day. Now on the 25th of October in 1760, George II dies. He is aged 77, so a great age to reach for someone born in the 1600s. He is succeeded by his grandson George, who would become George III. So there we go. Now please do comment down below any extra facts you have about King George II, and as well, of course, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more coins in the future on Bits and Bobs.